Hello, friends. This is Mrs. Dennis, and today we're going to read The Wind in the Willows, Chapter 7. And Chapter 7 is called Dolce Domum, which means what? Home sweet home. That's right, you got it. Here we go. It was close and airless, and the earthy smell was strong. The mole struck a match, and by its light, the rats saw that they were standing in an open space. The space was neatly swept and sanded underfoot. Directly facing them was Mole's little front door, with Mole End painted in Gothic lettering over the bell pull at the side. Mole took down a lantern from a nail on the wall and lit it, and the rat, looking round him, saw that they were in a sort of forecourt. A garden seat stood on one side of the door, and the other a roller. The mole was a tidy animal, and could not stand having his ground kicked up by other animals into little heaps of earth. Down on one side of the forecourt ran a skittle alley, with benches along it and little wooden tables. In the middle was a small, round pond. Mole's face beamed at the sight of all these objects. He hurried the rat through the door, lit a lamp in the hall, and took one glance round his old home. Immediately he saw the dust lying thick on everything, saw the cheerless, deserted look of the long-neglected house, and collapsed again on a hard chair. "Oh, Ratty," he cried dismally, "why ever did I do it? Why did I bring you to this poor, cold little place on a night like this?" The rat paid no heed to him. He was running here and there, opening doors, inspecting rooms and cupboards, and lighting lamps and candles. What a capital little house this is," he called out cheerily. "Everything here and everything in its place. The first thing we want is a good fire. I'll fetch the wood and the coals. You get the duster." Encouraged by his companion, the mole dusted and polished with energy, while the rat soon had a cheerful blaze roaring in the chimney. He hailed the mole to come and warm himself, but Mole promptly had another fit of the blues. "Rat," he moaned, "how about your supper? Your poor, cold, hungry, weary animal. I've nothing to give you." "What a fellow you are for giving in," said the rat calmly. "Why, only just now I saw a sardine opener on the kitchen dresser, and everybody knows that means there are sardines about somewhere. Pull yourself together and come with me and forage." They went and foraged accordingly, hunting through every cupboard and turning out every drawer. The result was not so very depressing after all. A tin of sardines, a box of Captain's biscuits nearly full, and a German sausage encased in silver paper. "There's a banquet for you," observed the rat, and he arranged the table. "No bread?" groaned the mole. "No butter? No caviar? No champagne?" continued the rat, grinning. "And that reminds me, what's that little door at the end of the passage? Your cellar, of course." Rat made for the cellar door, and presently reappeared with a bottle in each paw and another under each arm. "Now, wherever did you pick up those prints? Make the place look so home-like, they do. Now, wonder you're so fond of it. No wonder you're so fond of it, Mole. Tell us all about it, and how you came to make it what it is." The mole, much cheered by Rat's fine compliments, took time to show off his splendid abode. The rat, though desperately hungry, allowed Mole to hold court. At last the rat succeeded in decoying him to the table, and had just got seriously to work with the sardine opener when sounds were heard from the forecourt without, sounds like the scuffling of small feet and the confused murmur of tiny voices. "Now, all in line. Hold the lantern up a bit. Tommy, clear your throat first. Where's young Bill?" "What's up?" inquired the rat. I think it must be the field mice," replied the mole. "They go round carol singing regularly at this time of the year. I used to give them hot drinks and supper, too, sometimes." "Let's have a look at them," cried the rat, jumping up and running to the door. It was a pretty sight, that met their eyes in the forecourt lit by the dim rays of a lantern. Some 8 or 10 little field mice stood in a semicircle. They had red scarves round their necks, and their forepaws were thrust deep into their pockets. With bright, beady eyes, they glanced shyly at each other. As the door opened, one of the elder ones that carried the lantern proclaimed, "Now then, 1, 2, 3." And forthwith their shrill little voices rose up into the chill night air. "Villagers all this frosty tide, let your doors swing open wide. Through wind may follow and snow beside, yet draw us in by your fire to bide. Joy shall be yours in the morning. Here we stand in the cold and the sleet, blowing fingers and stamping feet. Come from far away you greet, you by the fire and we in the street, bidding you joy in the morning. For ere one half of the night was gone, sudden a star has led us on, raining bliss and venison, bliss tomorrow and more anon, joy for every morning." The voices ceased. The singers exchanged sidelong glances, but for only a moment. Then, from up above and far away, down the tunnel they had so lately traveled, come the sound of a distant bell ringing, a joyful and clangorous peal. "Very well sung, boys," cried the rat heartily. "Now come along in and warm yourselves." "Yes, come along, field mice," cried the mole eagerly. "This is quite like old times. Shut the door after you. Pull up that settle to the fire. Now, you just wait a minute while Oh, Ratty," he cried in despair, "we've nothing to give them." "You leave that to me," said the masterful rat. "Here, you with the lantern, I want to talk to you. Now tell me, are there any shops open at this hour of the night?" "Why, certainly, sir," replied the field mouse respectfully. "At this time of the year our shops keep open to all sorts of hours." "Then look here," said the rat. "You go off at once, you and your lantern, and you get me." Here much muttered conversation ensued, such as, "Fresh, mind, no, a pound of that will do. If you can't get it there, try somewhere else. Yes, of course, homemade." Finally, there was a chink of coin passing from paw to paw. The field mouse was provided with a basket for his purchases, and off he hurried. The rest of the field mice, perched in a row on the settle, their small legs swinging, gave themselves up to enjoyment of the fire. The rat, meanwhile, was busy examining the label on one of the bottles. "I perceive this to be ginger beer," he remarked approvingly. "The very thing. Now we shall be able to mull some ginger beer. Get the things ready, Mole, while I draw the corks." It did not take long to prepare the brew, and soon every field mouse was sipping and coughing and choking, for a little mulled ginger beer goes a long way, and wiping his eyes laughing. "They act plays too, these fellows," the mole explained to the rat. "Make them up all by themselves, and very well they do it too. They gave us a capital one last year about a field mouse who was captured by a sea pirate. Here, you were in it. Get up and recite a bit." The field mouse addressed got up on his legs, giggled shyly, looked round the room, and remained absolutely tongue-tied. His comrades cheered him on. Mole coaxed and encouraged him, and the rat went so far as to shake him, but nothing could overcome his stage fright. The now mute field mouse was saved from further encouragement by the sound of the door opening. The field mouse with the lantern had reappeared with a heavy basket. There was no more talk of play acting once the contents of the basket had been tumbled out onto the table. Under the generalship of Rat, everybody was set to do something. In a very few minutes supper was ready. As they ate, they talked of old times. They clattered of that last very grateful deed. When the door had closed on the last of them, Mole and Rat kicked up the fire, drew their chairs in, and discussed the events of the day. At last the rat, with a tremendous yawn, said, "Mole, I'm ready to drop. That your own bunk over there at that side? Very well then, I'll take this." Rat clambered into the bunk and rolled himself up with the baskets as slumber gathered in him. All right, friends, that is the end of our chapter for today. This was a much shorter chapter than the ones that we had listened to before. So what I want you to do is I want you to go to our discussion, like always, and I want you to answer the questions for this chapter on the discussion board. And if you need to re-listen to the chapter, please feel free to do so. And that's going to be it. So that's all for now.